जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना। यमुनातीरावनचारी। यमुनातीरावनचारी। जय राधमाधवा कुंज विहारी। जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना। यमुनातीरावनचारी। यमुनातीरावनचारी। जय राधमाधवा कुंज विहारी। जय राधमाधवा कुंज विहारी। जय कृष्ण रुक्मिणी जय सत्यभामा। कृष्ण रुक्मिणी जय सत्यभामा। जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम। कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम। जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय। गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय। जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 प्रभुपाद। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकतरेष्ठोत्तर सत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकतरेष्ठोत्तर सत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्-भागवतम की जय। श्री श्री कृष्ण रुक्मिणी सत्यभामा की जय। श्री श्री कृष्ण बलराम की जय। श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय। जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 25, The Glories of Devotional Service, text number 17. Tada Purusha Atmanam, Tada Purusha Atmanam, Tada Purusha Atmanam, Kevalam Prakritehe Param, Kevalam Prakritehe Param, Kevalam Prakritehe Param, Nirantaram Swayam Jyotihi, Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir, Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir, Animanam Akhanditam, Animanam Akhanditam, Animanam Akhanditam, Tada Purusha Atmanam, Kevalam Prakrite Param, Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir, Animanam Akhanditam, Tada Purusha Atmanam, Kevalam Prakrite Param, Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir, Animanam Akhanditam. Tada, then, Purushaha, the individual soul, Atmanam, himself, Kevalam, pure, Prakritehe Param, transcendental to material existence, Nirantaram, non-different, Swayam Jyotihi, self-effulgent, Animanam, infinitesimal, Akhanditam, not fragmented. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. At that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. Kindly repeat. At that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the state of pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see himself as a minute particle, non-different from the Supreme Lord. As stated in Bhagavad-gita, the jiva or the individual soul is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sun's rays are minute particles of the brilliant constitution of the sun, so a living entity is a minute particle of the Supreme Spirit. The individual soul and the Supreme Lord are not separated as in material differentiation. The individual soul is a particle from the very beginning. One should not think that because the individual soul is a particle, it is fragmented from the whole spirit. Mayavada philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. This philosophy, however, is unacceptable because spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. That part, the jiva, is eternally a part. As long as the Supreme Spirit exists, his part and parcel also exists. As long as the sun exists, the molecules of the sun's rays also exist. The jiva particle is estimated in the Vedic literature to be 1/10,000th the size of the upper portion of a hair. It is therefore infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is infinite, but the living entity or the individual soul is infinitesimal, although it is not different in quality from the Supreme Spirit. Two words in this verse are to be particularly noted. One is nirantaram, which means non-different or of the same quality. The individual soul is also expressed here as animanam. Animanam means infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is all-pervading, but the very small spirit is the individual soul. Akhanditam means not exactly fragmented, but constitutionally always infinitesimal. No one can separate the molecular parts of the sunshine from the sun, but at the same time, the molecular part of the sunshine is not as expansive as the sun itself. Similarly, the living entity by his constitutional position is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Spirit, but he is infinitesimal. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mokam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Mande Shri Gurum Deenataranam. One of the earliest remembrances of my childhood is my first day in school. My mother, she took me and my sister. She walked us all the way to the school. The school was maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes walk from the home. Mother, I was all of maybe 3 years old or whatever at that time, very small. She took, in one hand my sister was there, another hand she walked us all the way to school. My mother had made me wear all the uniform, wear the shoes, first time in my life. And as soon as we reached the school, my sister went to her classroom, I was put into another classroom. And I remember I was sitting in the front bench. And suddenly I realized I'm sitting in the midst of all these unknown people, and there is one lady who is standing there as the teacher, and I couldn't control myself. I started wailing, I started crying, and got up and ran out of the classroom. And then I was searching classroom after classroom. You know, all those classrooms in a school are arranged one after the other. I was running into each classroom and seeing, where is my sister? I'd go in, look into the classroom, they're full of some students, everybody is looking at me. Who is this guy who has rushed in? And then I jump out of that classroom, run into the next one. Like that, I ran to 2 or 3 classrooms. Suddenly, from behind, the teacher came and caught me. And she dragged me. I was wailing all the while, shouting at the top of my voice. She dragged me and back to the classroom and made me sit there. That was my first day in school. Gradually, with time, of course, got used to school, new people, made friends there, got used to the teacher and all that. And then slowly, as we all know, I'm sure all of you would have gone through this experience. First day in school is very difficult for the parents to take the child and make him sit in the classroom. Even for the teachers also, it will be very difficult. But as the child gets used to the classroom, new people, new faces, the child starts becoming accustomed to the school. Then what happens? We all, as children in school, we become very conscious. Oh, now time. I have to go to the school. Then we will start telling our mother, oh, late ho gaya, it's become late. Quickly, finish breakfast, run. We become very conscious. Then we start going to school on time. And as soon as the morning prayers are over, we immediately go and sit in the classroom. We start becoming more disciplined in our life. We internalize that this is how my life has to go on. And we make that schedule part of our life. And then what happens? Automatically, we ourselves, nobody has to tell us. Our parents don't have to tell us. Teachers don't have to tell us. We immediately become conscious. Oh, now it's time. I have to go to school. Get ready. Now finish breakfast. Wear the uniform. Rush. And if you are seeing that the time is, you are a little delayed, you will start running to school. So initially you see how it is. We are so reluctant to go to school. But as we get used to it, the students, then it becomes part of life. It becomes very normal for you to go to school on time, attend all the classes, come back home every day, do the homework, be ready for the next day, and get ready for the examinations. All these things become natural to us. We become naturalized to going to school. So Prabhupada gives this example that just like a student, in the initial days, the mother, the parents, the teachers, they all have to put a lot of effort to retain the child within the school. But as the child gets used to it, then he will start following all the rules and regulations of the school. Similarly, when a person starts practicing Bhakti Yoga, initially there is a lot of monitoring required. You have to come to morning Mangalarati, somebody has to come and wake you up, and then the temple commander has to be behind you. Why you didn't come today for Bhagavatam class? Did you do your reading today? Why you came late for Darshanarati? Where were you during Guru Puja? All these things, somebody has to be behind us, pushing us and making us follow. And initially for us, it is all full of rules and regulations. What is all these rules and regulations? Very tough. Too many rules. Sometimes people tell us, you people have too many rules and regulations. For everything, some rule or the other, you will bring up. You come into the temple hall, I want to offer obeisances. Hey, no, not this way. You have to offer this way. You have to keep the deities on the left and you have to offer dandavat like this. Baba, rule for everything. What is this? Initially, it is like that. Just like the child, first day in school, very difficult for the child. Oh, what is this? I have to come, I have to sit in the class whole day. Until then, I was happily playing around. No discipline, nobody was forcing me to sit in one place. Now I have to go to the classroom and sit there for hours together. And one person will come, call the teacher, and something, and all that person will speak, I have to keep hearing. What is my bad karma? That is the initial feeling. But later, when we get used to it, we will start looking forward to it. Similarly, in Bhakti Yoga, initially it appears that there are too many rules and regulations. But with time, what happens is we start getting used to it. And when we naturalize the rules and regulations in Bhakti Yoga, the same rules and regulations will become joyful. We will become happy in performing those rules and regulations. Why? Because the Srimad-Bhagavatam says, Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Nityam bhagavata sevaya. By following the process of devotional service, hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam every day and performing sadhana according to the instructions of a Bhagavata, of a Mahabhagavata, of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, whom we have accepted as our Guru, as our initiating spiritual master, what happens? Then the contaminations within the heart, nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, all the contaminations within the heart, prayeshu, are almost finished. Not that they need to be fully finished. Even almost 80%, 90%, all the contaminations within the heart are finished. And by doing this, what happens? Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. We will develop love and affection for Krishna. The same activities which we do under rule and regulation. Oh, this is a rule, we should do this. This is a regulation, we should not do this. you will become naturalized to it, and you will like to follow those things. Nobody has to be behind you. Mangalarti, you will automatically get up because it is a wonderful opportunity to have darshan of the Supreme Lord. It is an opportunity to associate with other Vaishnavas, to be able to engage in Sankirtan. It becomes a joyfully performed activity. Initially, chanting 16 rounds is like very difficult rule and regulation. I remember initially, when we were bhaktas, we were 2-3 devotees who were very close to each other, and every Saturday, Sunday we would come to the temple in Bangalore and do our service and go back. Slowly we started chanting, and we started chanting 16 malas. So there used to be a conversation amongst our friends. Somehow we have to perfect our life within this one lifetime, and we have to become pure devotees and go back to Godhead. Somehow we have to do it. We are discussing very strongly. Always we used to discuss. We have to be very determined. Somehow this life we have to perfect our life and go back to Godhead. Why? What was the motivation? Once we go back to Godhead, no more chanting 16 malas. Over, finished, Abba. You see, that used to be the motivation to go back to Godhead. So initially, it is like that. Chanting the holy names also, 16 malas you have to do. It is a rule and regulation. But as we go on practicing year after year, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, what happens? The chanting itself, we will start looking forward to it. Why only 16 malas? Why not 16,000 malas? It will become like that. This is as we progress in devotional life, this is natural. And when we become naturalized to Krishna consciousness like this, when that performance of devotional life, when the performance of Bhakti Yoga, following all those rules and regulations, instead of generating a sense of somehow grudgingly doing it, instead of that you start lovingly, happily start doing it, what happens is, Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, all the contamination within the heart would have got destroyed. It would have got washed away. So, what is that contamination? That has been described in the previous verse by Kapila Deva, previous to today's verse. What did he say in the previous verse? In the 16th verse, he said, Aham mamabhimanottaihi kamalobhadhibir malaihi Vitam yada manashuddham adukkam asukham samam. When one is completely cleansed of the impurities, malam. What are the impurities? Impurities of lust and greed, produced from false identification of the body as I, aham, and bodily possessions as mine, mama. One's mind becomes purified. So, this was the previous verse. Yada, when the mind becomes purified. Today's verse is a continuation of the previous verse. So it says tada. Yada means when, tada means then. When the mind becomes purified, then what happens is described in today's verse. What happens? Purusha atmanam kevalam prakrutehe param. The soul at that time, by performance of devotional service, his consciousness is purified of the material impurities of I and mine. Then what happens? At that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence. Kevalam prakrutehe param. Transcendental to material existence. And then what happens is, so when one's consciousness is purified by the performance of devotional service, one overcomes the concept that I am the body. And he is able to see, he is able to perceive, I am not the body. I have an existence independent of the body. Then what am I? I am spirit soul, I am Atma. And what is the nature of the Atma? Nature of the Atma is to be conscious. Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam. Vinasham avyayasyasya nakaschit kartum arhati. Know that which pervades the entire body is consciousness, which is indestructible. Shri Krishna Rukmini Satyabhama ki jai. The consciousness which pervades the body is indestructible. Vinasham avyayasya na kaschit kartum arhati. It is impossible to destroy the soul. Avinashi tu tadvidhi. The The soul is indestructible and nobody can destroy the soul. Yena sarvam idam tatam. Idam means this body. This body is tatam, is pervaded by the soul. Actually, to be able to perceive, there are two things in this. To be able to perceive that I am not this body, but I am the consciousness which is pervading the body, is the right perception which comes about by the cleansing of the contamination in the mind, that I am this body, by the process of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. This is the first thing. Second thing is, when Krishna is saying, Avinashitu tadvidhi sarvamidam tatam, we have to understand that when our mind is completely cleansed by the performance of Bhakti Yoga, we will be able to see that I, as a spirit soul, my consciousness is limited to pervading this body only. Krishna explained this more clearly in the 13th chapter, the second and the third verses of the Bhagavad-gita. Krishna says in the second verse, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetram Ityabhidiyate. Idam Shariram, this body, Kshetram Ityabhidiyate, is called the field of activities. Yetadyo veti tam prahuhu kshetrajnaha iti tadvidaha. And the person who knows the body is called the kshetrajna. That means my knowledge as a pure soul, as a conscious entity, is limited to this body. And in the next verse, Krishna says, Kshetrajnam chapi mam viddhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. At the same time, O Arjuna, O descendant of Bharata, know that I, that means Krishna, Kshetrajnam chapi sarva kshetreshu, I am aware of all the bodies. Arjuna, as an infinitesimal soul, he can understand only what is going on within his body. He is aware only of his body. Whereas Krishna, being the Paramatma, he is aware of what is going on in every body. The Upanishads state that there are two living entities within the body, like two birds sitting on a tree. Dva suparna sayuja sakhaya. And one of them is the soul, Atma, which is conscious of this body. We are all conscious of our body. Somebody pricks a pin on our toe or on our finger, we immediately become aware. Somebody is pricking my finger or my toe, because my consciousness is spread all over the body. What we don't understand is there is one more person within this same body who is also equally aware what is going on. That we are not aware. We are aware only of what is going on in the body. But there is one more person in this body who is also equally aware of what is going on in this body. Moment my finger is pricked, not only I become aware that my finger is pricked, there is another person also who is becoming aware, which is Krishna, who is seated in the heart as Paramatma. And and if somebody pricks your finger, I cannot make out. But Krishna as Paramatma can make out what is going on in your body, what is going on in my body, what is going on in your mind, what is going on in my mind. Krishna is aware of all the bodies, whatever is going on. So therefore, to be able to perceive this, that I as spirit soul, my consciousness is limited only to my body. I am not the super consciousness where I am aware of what is going on in everybody's body. That quality, that characteristics belongs to somebody else who is known as the Paramatma, who is Krishna. To be able to see both these things is actually knowledge, which arises out of only the process of Bhakti Yoga. By following the process of Ashtanga Yoga and by following the process of Jnana Yoga, you cannot get the second perceptive. The first perception you can get by following the process of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. You can perceive that I am a spirit soul and my consciousness is spread all over the body, which is different from this body. That much you can perceive. But to be able to perceive in addition to that there is one more Atma who is capable of perceiving, capable of being conscious of what is going on everywhere. And that personality is Krishna, is a product only of performing Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. By performing Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Karma Yoga, you cannot come to this perception. It is not possible. Actually, by performing the process of Jnana Yoga, the impersonalists come to understand that this, especially the Mayavadis, they understand that the Supreme Atma, the Super Soul, is spread everywhere. Its consciousness is spread everywhere. I am also that same Super Soul. I am that Paramatma. But in illusion, now I am thinking I am different from that Atma. Why? Because the Vedic scriptures state that the Atma is Akhandita. It cannot be fragmented. So if I am saying that I am an Atma whose consciousness is limited to the body, simultaneously there is one more Atma, Paramatma, whose consciousness is spread everywhere, who is all pervasive, then what happens? I have become fragmented. I become Khanda. So therefore the Mayavadis say, this is only illusion. When I come out of the illusion, I will realize I am that Supreme Brahman. But then the Upanishads have other statements which contradict this understanding of the Mayavadis. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad states, Balagra Chatabhagasya Chatadha Kalpitasya Cha. So it says, Bala Agra, the tip of the hair, if you divide it into 100 parts, Shatadha, if you divide it into 100 parts, and each of those 100 parts, Shatadha Kalpitasya, you again divide it into 100 parts. That means if the tip of the hair, if you divide it into 1/10,000 parts, then Jivo Bhagassa Vijneyaha Chachanantyaya Kalpate. That minute 1/10,000, the tip of the hair, is the magnitude of the soul. And that soul, Anantyaya Chakalpate, is eternal. This is the description in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So what is Shvetashvatara Upanishad is stating? It is stating that the living entity is so minute. When it is saying you divide the hair into 1/10,000 parts, what it actually means is not that actually the soul you can measure it like 1/10,000 tip of the hair. What it means is it is so minute. It is so minute, and you cannot measure the spirit soul. What is the dimension of the spirit soul? You cannot take a scale or an electron microscope and measure. The soul is immeasurable. At the same time, it is very, very minute. And Anantyaya Chakalpate, that minuteness is retained eternally. It is not that the living entity, when it realizes, when it comes out of illusion, it will realize, I am that Supreme Brahman. That Supreme Brahman, Vishnu or Krishna, is described not as Anu, but as Vibhu. Vibhu means one who is great. Similarly, in the Mundaka Upanishad also it is stated, Esho Anuratma, Chetasa Veditavyo. This Atma is Anu, and it is perceived, Chetasa Veditavya. It is perceived when your consciousness is purified. How is consciousness purified? Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. By performance of devotional service, what happens? By performance of constant, uninterrupted, daily devotional service, in a regulated way, what happens? Our consciousness becomes purified. And Chetasa Veditavya, when our consciousness becomes purified, Yesho Anuratma. And that Anu Atma, what about that Anuratma? Yasmin Pranaha Panchada Samvivesha. That Atma, that soul, is covered by 5 kinds of air. Prana, Apana, Vyana, Samana, Udana. These 5 kinds of air are circulating within the heart, and the soul is floating within that air, prana, within the heart. Prana Panchada Samvivesha. It is surrounded, it is covered by the 5 kinds of air, and the soul is floating in that 5 kinds of air within the heart. And this pranaihi sarvam otam protam idam prajanam. That prana, by that prana, the living entity's consciousness, otam idam sarvam, it is spread, the consciousness is spread all over the body. The same thing what Krishna said, avinashitu tadviddi sarvamidam tatam. The same thing, that pranaihi sarvamidam otam prajanam. The entire body is pervaded by the consciousness of this soul. Yasmin vishuddhe vibhavatyesha atma. When the soul becomes purified of the contamination due to the surrounding by the 5 kinds of air, then the real glory of that soul is established. What is the glory of that soul? Not to become all-pervading. Yesho Anuratma, to realize that I am a spirit soul, my consciousness, I am eternal, and with the consciousness I am pervading this body, and I am Anu. I am infinitesimal, I am atomic in size. That is my constitutional position. This is perceived when Chetasa Veditavyaha. Yasmin Vishuddhe. When my consciousness becomes purified, I'll be able to see these two things very, very clearly. Unlike the Mayavadis. So the Mayavadis have contaminated consciousness because they are not rendering devotional service to Krishna. Ye anye aravindaksha vimuktamaninas tvayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhayaha. So the avishuddha buddhayaha, because their consciousness is not purified, ye anye aravindaksha vimuktamaninaha. These Mayavadis, they are thinking they have become liberated. But actually what is the position? Avishuddha buddhayaha, their consciousness is still not completely pure. It is still contaminated. Aruhya krishrena parampadam. They have come to that position of being vimukta maninaha, thinking that they are liberated with great difficulty. They have taken a lot of tapasya, cultivated knowledge, cultivated spiritual knowledge, knowledge of the Vedanta Sutras, Upanishads, everything, for many, many lifetimes. And they have come to this position with great difficulty. Aruhya krishrena parampadam. But then what? Avishuddha buddhaya, their consciousness is not purified. Why their consciousness is not purified? Because the Bhagavatam says that Avishuddha buddhaya, your consciousness is not purified because they have not taken shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. And because they have not taken shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, what happens? They again fall down to this material world. So, the living entity, until he comes to the process of taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, meaning he starts rendering devotional service to Krishna, until he comes to that position, his consciousness cannot become fully purified. And when he takes shelter of the lotus feet of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, and a Nityam Bhagavata Seva, he starts rendering devotional service, Nityam, constantly, every day, day after day, he performs the same regulated devotional service. Then what happens? His consciousness will become purified, as Kapiladeva has mentioned in the previous verse, that Aham Maha Mama Bhimanottaihi Kamalobhadibir Malaihi Vitam Yada Manaha Shuddham. That mind will become purified of the contamination, thinking I am this body and everything related to the body is mine. Adukam Asukam Samam. And at that time, he transcends the stage of so-called material happiness and distress. And then what happens? He knows Kevalam Prakriti Param. I am a living entity. I am beyond the influence of the three modes of material nature. I am not part of this material world. I am not influenced by the three modes of material world like this body. I am beyond this body. And then Nirantaram. Swayam Jyoti, Nirantaram. I am a part and parcel of Krishna. I cannot be separated from Krishna. Swayam Jyoti, I am full of knowledge. Swayam Jyoti, he is self-illuminated. And Animanam, I am infinitesimal. And Akhanditam. It's not like the Mayavadis are thinking that I become fragmented. I become separated eternally from Krishna. No. I am eternally part and parcel of Krishna. At the same time, I am not as great as Krishna. I am eternally Animanam. I am eternally a fragment, a part, a spark of Krishna. And I cannot be separated. I cannot be removed from my position of being eternally an amsha, a fragment, an atomic part and parcel of Krishna. I am not a separated fragment from Krishna. I am united with Krishna. At the same time, I have my individual existence as an infinitesimal, atomic spirit soul. Actually, to comprehend this is very difficult. Sometimes, some people give this example. You take a piece of paper and you tear it into 4 pieces. And then you join it and again tear it into 4 more pieces. What will happen? You'll be left with so many small pieces of paper. Isn't it? Now, all these small pieces of paper are in your hand now. Where is the original paper? Original paper is over, finished. Therefore, this example is given to say that if the living entity is infinitesimal and it is a small atomic individual living person, then that means it has fragmented from the Supreme Spirit whole. And that means the Supreme Spirit also ceases to exist. Therefore, we are all actually not individual spirit souls. We are all the same Supreme Brahman, but in illusion we are thinking we are separated. This is Mayavada philosophy. But the actual reality is the Krishna, the Supreme Spirit, is not a piece of paper that you can tear him into different pieces. He is a conscious personality. And the example is given in the Ishopanishad, Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. You take many complete individual units out from that Supreme Spirit whole, which is Krishna, then you keep on taking unlimited individual units out of Krishna, still that Supreme whole, which is Krishna, will remain as he is. He will not diminish. He will not reduce. He will not become fragmented. It is not possible. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, we are simultaneously one with and different from Krishna. And therefore, this is achintya, this is inconceivable how we can simultaneously be one with and different from Krishna. So this is the quality of the spirit soul. Therefore, the soul is called akhanditam. Akhanditam means it is not fragmented, but at the same time it is eternally animanam. It is a small atomic spirit soul which is different from Krishna. At the same time, nirantaram, it is one with Krishna also. It is one with Krishna as his part and parcel. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, Mamai Vamcho Jivaloke Jivabhota Sanatanaha. Sanatana, eternally, Mamaiva Amshaha. We are Amsha of Krishna. We are fragments of Krishna. We are part and parcel of Krishna. At the same time, we have individual existence. At the same time, we are not separated from Krishna. This is how we are connected with Krishna, and to be able to perceive this is the real knowledge which a person can attain only when he is rendering uninterrupted, unmotivated devotional service to Krishna. By the performance of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, one cannot develop this perception. So, as it is, actually, this verse is the continuation of the previous verse. And the word, if you see in this verse, Tada Purusha Atmanam Kevalam Prakrite Param Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir Animanam Akhanditam. It says that then the spirit soul is transcendental to material existence, always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. It doesn't say that he is able to see this. That the word that to be able to see this comes in the next verse. Paripashyati. It is coming in the next verse. So these three verses are continuous verses. This present verse is in the middle of the previous verse and the next verse. So what is the continuation of this verse? We will see in the next verse, which is the 18th verse in the next class. So I'll stop here. If there are any questions or comments, we can discuss. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Like we understand that soul is infinitesimal. Also, we know the difference between material body and soul.
Sorry?
We know the difference also between material body and the soul.
Yeah.
Just wanted to know, is there any information like the size of the spiritual body in the residence of Vaikuntha? Do the spiritual body also undergoes any changes in the spiritual world? Like the whole material world, body changes under the influence of Yoga Maya there?
So actually, first point we have to understand is what is the size of the spirit soul. Actually, the Vedic scriptures state that the soul is immeasurable, and the example given, Balagrasya Tabagrasya Tata Kalpitasya, that kind of example is given to make us understand it's not possible to measure the soul. Why is it not possible to measure the size of the soul? So, there are two meanings to this. When we say Balagrasya Tabagrasya Tata Kalpitasya, one is that it is very minute, the soul is very minute. To differentiate it from Vibhu, the Supreme Spirit Soul, Krishna, who is very, very great, the example is given that the soul is like 1/10,000 the tip of the hair. Another meaning which is conveyed is that it is impossible to measure the soul. Why is it impossible to measure the soul? Because what we have to understand is, when we say measure, when we look at dimensions, length, height, breadth, all these things, length, width and breadth, this is referring to 3 dimensions in space. And 3 dimensions in space, when we have space and an object occupies space, then we can measure what are the 3 dimensions. And what is space? Space is a material object. Ahankara, Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, Bhumi Rapo Analo Vayu Kam Mano Buddhirevacha Ahankara Ityeme Bhinna Prakriti Rashtada. This material world comprising earth, water, fire, air, space is actually matter, is material energy of Krishna. This is the inferior energy of Krishna. Therefore, what we can understand is space is also made of matter. And anything which occupies space has to be made of matter. But the spirit soul is not made of matter, and therefore it doesn't occupy any space. And because it doesn't occupy space, you cannot measure. Therefore, when our question itself, when the question comes in our mind, what is the size of spirit soul? That means we are trying to attribute a material quality to the soul. We are used to being able to measure the size of the material body. Therefore, we think the soul also has to be measurable. It must have a certain height, it must have a certain width, it must have a certain weight. Sorry, the soul doesn't have any of these characteristics because it is not made of matter. And that is why the doctors may cut open the body entirely. They may be able to dissect the entire body. They will not be able to find the spirit soul anywhere within the body. But fact is, spirit soul is there within the body. So to answer your question, you cannot measure the size of the spirit soul, because measuring means it is on the material plane. On the spiritual plane, there is no measurement. But form is there. Form is there. Whatever material forms we are seeing in the material world, man, woman, animal, plant, bird, etc., these are all material imitations of the forms which exist in the spirit soul, in the spiritual world. But then these material imitations have certain material size because they are made of matter. The original forms are in the spiritual world, but they are not made of matter, and so therefore you cannot measure them like you measure them in this material world. But yes, you will be able to see that form, spiritual form in the spiritual world when you develop the spiritual eyes to be able to see it. Okay, so that is the first answering the first part of the question. Second part of the question is that the spirit soul is explained to be avyaya. Avyaya. Vyaya means undergoing diminution. So the spirit soul, the material body, is always kshaya, or it undergoes vyaya. It undergoes transformation, and it decays, it degrades over a period of time. That is why maintenance is a very big activity in the material world. Anything material will degrade with time. This is the nature of the material world. But the spirit soul is neither kshaya nor is it vyaya. It is avyaya and it is akshaya, meaning it doesn't undergo transformation and it never degrades. It remains eternally. That is why the living entity is called sanatana. It is eternal. And because it is the very fact that the soul is eternal means it cannot undergo any transformation. It is only matter which undergoes transformation, because matter is destructible. It can be destroyed. So therefore, matter undergoes diminution, matter undergoes transformation, whereas the soul, the matter undergoes vikara, whereas the spirit soul is called avikara, means it cannot undergo, it does not undergo any transformation. Is that okay? Any other? Yes.
Generally in this material world, the jiva is thinking itself in asat. In existentially, it is thinking it has accepted a asat, achit and nirananda body in consciousness wise, which is...
No. Are you saying that we are thinking that we have accepted a body which is nirananda? We are not jiva thinking, we have actually accepted.
The jiva mistaken himself as in the sense that an asat body to be its own body.
Yes.
Then in that asat body, the chit knowledge gathered is also ignorance.
Huh?
The knowledge that is gathered by the asat in that asat platform, the chit is also distorted. The knowledge gathered by that body is also distorted, and there is no ananda.
Yeah.
but it is thinking the Ananda is there.
Yes.
So as the Jiva is elevation, slowly it gets elevated. So it sees its constitutional position in Krishna consciousness, and it's slowly the Jiva is engaging in devotion service.
Yes.
It starts to see the reality. So all these things go away.
Yeah.
Then false designation also go away.
Yes.
Then actual Ananda, the substance, that which is not exploited or that is not grabbed, but from within Ananda, in engaging in devotion service, that arises.
Yeah.
Slowly the soul awakens its own original constitutional position. So now Prabhupada says once it awakens its love of Godhead in 5 rasas, so Prabhupada says that it goes to the spiritual world and takes the shelter of the womb of a gopi. So
That's not what Prabhupada says.
that,
Okay, anyway, continue. That's not what Prabhupada says. Anyway, continue.
So once it takes shelter there in the spiritual world, there also there is transformations, like
No,
different-
that is not correct. What happens is that when we become pure devotees, when we have perfected our life and we come to know who we are in the spiritual world, then what happens? Next life, we take birth in the material world in a place where Krishna's pastimes are going on currently. And there, we are further trained up and further we become perfect in executing service to Krishna in that role of our original personality. Once we have perfected that, then we go back to the spiritual world. And when we go back to the spiritual world, it's like waking up from a sleep. For a second, we were away, and suddenly we have again opened our eyes and we are back in the spiritual world. It's not like what you are saying, we have to again take birth. There is no birth happening in the spiritual world. Where is the question of taking shelter of the womb of a gopi and all those kind of things? I don't know where you have got this. This is not what Prabhupada says. Prabhupada says very clearly that when we perfect our life, we will take birth again in this material world, in the place where Krishna is performing his leelas, and we get to participate in those leelas so that we get further trained. And then next life, we are back in the spiritual world. Okay, so there is no transformation.
So one maybe in this material world also, there may be no difference for him, spiritual and material world.
Yeah, so?
I'm just getting a
So but once we have become a pure devotee, once we have developed Krishna Prema, and we have again awakened our original constitutional position, once I have remembered who I am in the spiritual world, then from that point of time, there is no difference between being in the material world or in the spiritual world. It's all the same. Because at that point of time, when I develop Krishna Prema, Prabhupada gives what are the different stages through which we go through. Ādau Shraddha, Tata Sadhu Sangha, Tato Anartha Nivriti Syat, Nishtha Ruchis Tataha. So when we Ādau Shraddha, in the beginning we have a little faith. Then what happens? Tato Ādau Shraddha, Tata Sadhu Sangha. We come in contact with some devotees. Then what happens? Bhajana Kriya. We engage in devotional service to Krishna. Because the devotees will engage. We take initiation. We take Diksha. And taking Diksha is the third stage. And when we take Diksha, what happens is Anartha Nivriti. All the Anarthas are removed. They are washed away by the spiritual master. Then what happens? We become Nishtha. We become fixed up in rendering Sadhana Bhakti. We become fixed up in rendering Vaidhi Bhakti. Then what happens is Nishtha Ruchis Tataha. We develop Ruchi, taste. That means, and then we become Asakti. We become attached to performing our devotional service. That means we graduate to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti. In the stage of Sadhana Bhakti, there are two divisions. One is Vaidhi Bhakti, another is Raganuga Bhakti. So we come to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti. In that stage of Raganuga Bhakti, what happens? We will be able to hear the Paramatma dictating to us. The Paramatma will directly start giving us instructions to perform devotional service to him. And then after that comes the stage of Bhava. And when one comes to the stage of Bhava, when we chant Krishna's holy name, in the heart, like a television, we'll be able to see all the pastimes of Krishna going on in our heart. That is the stage of Bhava. Then finally comes the stage of Krishna Prema. When we come to the stage of Krishna Prema, we know who we are in the spiritual world. And at that stage, what happens? We will be able to sit and talk to Krishna across face to face. So once we come to that stage of who I am in the spiritual world and I am sitting and talking to Krishna face to face, what is the difference between material world and spiritual world? There is no difference. So this material world becomes converted into the spiritual world for a pure devotee. That is how we understand. Okay? So we'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.